All right. Hey, everyone. I see people are starting to trickle in, really coming at a pretty rapid rate. I'm going to wait until about 12:01, 12:02, and then we'll get started just to give everyone time to join. Hey, Andali.
Hello. I was just like, oh my word, am I late? And please don't let the camera go on.
I always hate when that happens and the camera goes on. I'm not expecting it to. I just completely look like I rolled out of bed or something.
Yep, like I just looked like this morning and yesterday morning.
I wasn't saying that. I was saying me personally.
No, I'm saying it for me. So.
All right, so we are at 41 attendees, and let's wait just a little bit longer, and then we will go ahead and get started. While we are waiting, welcome everyone to our financials portion of our release management lunch and learn series for the first release of 2022. We'll get started here. It is 12:02, so let's go ahead and get started. So if you're new to these lunch and learn webinars, welcome. My name is Luke Donaldson. I'm on our FINS post-production support team here, and I've led release management on the financial side for a couple of the last cycles that we've done. I know that some of you attended the session that Victoria put on yesterday that went over some of the highlights from the HCM side of things. If you didn't, we can get you that recording. It was a great session with some really good information about the upcoming release. Today's session will be focused primarily on the financial side, but you will see some overlap between the session yesterday as some of the cross-application services are shared between the two. So yes, today we'll focus primarily on financials though. All right. So by way of introduction, my name is Luke Donaldson. I'm an associate director. I home office out of Frisco, Texas, which is far north Dallas. And I actually got to increment this for the slide over the last release. I now have 8 years in the Workday ecosystem. I started off implementing HCM with large enterprises, went to the client side after a couple of years of doing that, implemented HCM and financials from the client side. And now I'm back in consulting, really as of 2 years ago, back in consulting. So it's been a bit. And I focus primarily on financials and reporting and analytics now with a minor in acquisitions. So if you have any acquisition work, let me know, and I'm happy to help out in acquisitions as well. So our agenda for today, first off, we're going to be looking at the key dates for this release. These dates are relatively static for each release, but of course they fit into the calendars differently because the first week in February or what have you falls on different dates each year. Next off, we'll go through what's new. We're going to focus primarily on what is automatically available for this release, but we are going to go into some of the juicy opt-in bits, some of the stuff that makes a big difference in some of your lives day to day. And there are a couple of things I'm pleased to report this release that really will have an impact for some of you, primarily in the procurement space. That is, I kind of buried the lead on that one, but we're going to go through opt-in stuff. Next, we're going to let you know what to do if you need help with the release or this release cycle and how we can help you out. And then kind of give the what now. So, you know, we attended the release management webinar. What do we do now for release management on our site? And then lastly, we will have time for some Q&A. I don't anticipate that we'll be presenting these slides the entire time. I know that a couple releases ago, I went up right to the wire and we had a 2-minute Q&A, and that was far less than ideal. So I've been working on being more concise. That was my development point there. All right, key dates. First off, one, this has already happened. So release is in preview as of this last Saturday morning. If you are the name support contact, you got the 30 different emails about production and preview environments and what have you. So that's a sure sign that release is now in preview. What you need to be doing this week, we are working on assessing the impact. So first off, that is us creating what we call the heat map document, which I'll go into here in a second. assessing how this release is going to impact our customers, and then you on the customer side, looking at that heat map if you get a copy from us, which I'll tell you how to do later, and assessing how it personally impacts your tenant. And if there's anything that you need to update or anything that you should look at uptaking or what have you. So assessing the impact. Next off, we go into conduct release testing. So this is a 2-week period, can stretch into 3 weeks, where you've identified what you want to look at for this release and you are testing it in your environment. Next off, we go into March. The change management window is the first 2 weeks in March, and then release is in production on the 12th. So the morning of the 12th, that's Saturday the 12th, again, you'll have another one of those days where if you're the name support contact, you get those 30 emails about production being live with 2022 R1, and you'll know that production has the update in it. The change management window is where we like to encourage you to focus on any communications you may need to have with your organizations about upcoming changes. And right off the bat today, I'll go into one that may require some change management if you choose to opt in. So ultimately, what I would say about this kind of some added narrative is I personally, back when I was a client doing release management and now as an implementer doing release management, I like to have a meeting on the Thursday before the release goes into production. So in this case, it would be March 10th. You meet as a team and say, hey, we are signing off that we have reviewed everything that is relevant to us for the release and that we do not anticipate that there will be any issues when the release goes live for us. Luckily, Workday doesn't make a habit of breaking existing functionality, but every now and then they throw something in that you need to account for. The most recent example I can think of is on the HCM side. Whenever they changed the flag for ineligible for rehire, they changed it from a double negative to a positive. And because of that, a lot of clients had to update their condition rules on their termination business processes. So little things like that could throw a wrench in operations. I like to have a meeting the Thursday before the release goes into production and talk through that with the team and make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. Doing that on Thursday gives you all of Friday to do any resolutions or planning for Saturday when the tenant comes back online with the new release. And then your post-go live activities happen after the 12th. So let's jump right into it. What's new? The first thing we're going to focus on here is cross-application. So if you were on the call with Victoria yesterday, you saw this. Workday today, or the Workday People Experience, is now an opt-out. So up until now, it's been where you needed to opt into it. Now you are opting out of it. What this is a new homepage for Workday. It's got the 3 horizontal lines up in the corner that if you click them, it opens a quick menu that pops out left to right for about like an eighth of the page that has your apps, aka your worklets. And it also has like a little favorites bar or things that you can bookmark there to access. Next, it has your greeting up top. Waiting your action is like an inbox preview for the end user. You have your quick tasks here, which are just tasks that Workday thinks that the end user should focus on. You have your timely suggestions. Again, this is part of the people experience, something that Workday wants to kind of guide end users towards looking at. Your announcements worklet, really it used to be in the past that it was kind of closer to where your waiting your action is. And now it's kind of relegated down to that bottom corner. And then there's the recommended for you area. Something I would like to point out is if you're trying to access your worklets, they used to be prominently displayed on the home page. Now you have to click view all apps to see those. So that's the people experience that's coming out. It's now opt out. What does that mean for you as a Workday client? It means that you have until March 10th, I believe it is, to opt out of this in your production environment. What happens if you opt out? If you opt out, your Workday homepage will remain the same, and you are allowed to continue opting out until 2022 R2. I will say that there's been a lot of discourse on this on Workday community. There's a lot of clients that are live on this already because it's been around for a while that are chiming in with enhancements that they would like to see Workday make. And then there are some clients that are not yet live that are just letting Workday know some things that they would like to see before this becomes a mandatory homepage. That being said, what that tells me is Workday has continued to push out the opt-out. Prior to this release, it was going to be that it was a mandatory homepage for 2022 R1. And then just recently, in the last couple of months, they announced, hey, you can still opt out of this. So if I kind of had to look into the future and place my bets on where I think this is going, I think there will be significant updates before it's made mandatory for all clients or all customers of Workday. So if you choose to opt out until 2022 R2, I think that there will be another option or a update to the experience prior to you having to opt in. But again, that's kind of my own little safe harbor, my own bets that I'm making here. Another thing to know, if you choose to opt out now, at any point in time, you can opt in. But once you have opted in, you can't go back. You can't opt out. So it's kind of a one-way path there. So I know a lot of the clients that I've talked to so far about this are opting out, and then they're going to try and roll it out between now and 2022 R2, or they're just going to wait until 2022 R2. So don't want to belabor that point any further. It is a significant change, and part of this change that is coming is that the search function is also changing within Workday. Whenever you searched in Workday, you used to get your categories to the left. Those categories that you see are changing. They will still be to the left, but the experience is being updated. Workday is referring to it as the Workday Federated Search. I have a tip later to show you how to opt out of that if you do have people experience enabled. So again, your big punchline here, and if I could get you to do anything right now, it would be to set a calendar reminder for like March the 9th and remind you and your organization to either opt out of this or be ready to go live with this by then. All right, next up, getting right into it, procurement. So right now we have a new My Requisitions page, and this is actually pretty neat. I spoke with a customer this morning who was on the customer oversight team. They got to speak with Workday about this and recommend what is going on here. So there have been great updates to the My Requisition reporting. So what you're seeing here is it is a very user-friendly way of showing someone where their requisitions are in the process. So these are all the requisitions that Teresa Serrano, who's our GMS finance admin, has submitted. And you can see all along the process where they're at, whether they're ordering, receiving, invoicing. And then those blue and red indicators right there, you can actually click into them and receive additional detail on where that step is at. This is a great enhancement. It's automatically available though. So if your end user group is used to using the My Requisitions report, this is something you may want to update your training materials around. All right. Next up in procurement, we have the ability to mass cancel receipts. This is one of those I was talking about earlier where you're able to, I guess the best way of saying it is your life is going to be a lot easier. If you have a lot of issues with receipt validity or with receipts being entered in large quantities and you having to back those out, which I realize is kind of a niche problem, but I have had several clients say that it'd be very nice to not have to cancel receipts one by one by one. And so it's an existing task that users in your tenant already have access to if you have it set up. It's called mass cancel procurement documents. You do have to update the business process security policies to enable this. So I would give access to mass cancel receipts to the people that you already have access for mass canceling other procurement documents. So what you're seeing here is you enter a request name because this request name is used to track the overall request down the road if you're looking at why a receipt was canceled. You select your company hierarchy. So this is all something that existed in the tenant beforehand, and then this is where we diverge. You can now choose receipt and then advance into the filter area. So I'll pause here. This filter area looks very akin to something you see with, say, like a settlement run, or where you're pulling in supplier payments, supplier invoices, what have you, into a payment run. It gives you a couple filter criteria and then gives you all of your results based on that. And so once you do that, it will actually take you into a grid to pick, and it's kind of a select one or select all, which receipts you would like to cancel. So really excited for the couple clients that I've worked with that this has been a major issue for, and this is going to save them a lot of time moving forward. All right. Next up, expenses. This is another one that I got really excited. about. This is great for one. CrossCountry did just go live on Workday, so I'm excited about for our own usage of it, and then I'm excited for our clients that I know have been banging on the drum and really wanting Workday to implement this for a while. But the ability to create expense reports for non-workers now has the ability to create it for candidates. So you've already been able to create expense reports for non-workers, right? Think board members, think contingent workers, what have you. But now you can do it for candidates, and it is specifically tied to the job application that they were applying with. And so what that means is you have that traceability whenever you are issuing them repayment for their expenses for the whole job interview process or anything related to their job application. So the effort to enable this is pretty easy. It's one domain. It's a candidate data, candidate expenses. You add the correct expense people on there. So say your expense partner or your recruiter, if that's who you want doing this. And then you just make sure that they have the right business process security policy access, and then they can go ahead and do this. Literally the task you search for is create expense report for non-worker. You put in candidate, and then you can search for all of your candidates. If you can't find any candidates, but you can select candidate, that is the domain security policy issue that you're running into there. Next up. Here we go. You have the ability to not allow submission of forecast budgets. So I know that this has been a pain point for some of you all that are heavy project users. So if you have people accidentally submitting budgets that are forecast when they know they shouldn't be, what you can do is just go ahead and run this task, which is maintain default project budget configuration. It's a mouthful, but this is at the tenant level. You can check this and hit OK, and people will no longer be able to submit those forecast budgets. All right. Next up. In projects, we now are retiring some functionality, and I say retiring loosely. For those of you who are familiar with how Workday retires stuff, this may be a review, and I apologize, but for those of you who are not, what Workday does is they append the words "do not use" to the end of something that they intend to retire in a future release. I've seen a lot of our clients say, "Whoa, we've been using this report forever," and all of a sudden it says "do not use." That doesn't mean that the report is not working. It doesn't mean that the report is not currently able to be used. What it means is that within the next 2 to 3 Workday releases, Workday is going to fully retire that, and you need to start looking for other options for that same thing. Workday generally, whenever they retire something like this, gives a direct replacement functionality-wise, but sometimes they do not. In this case, there was a lot of concern around some of the data coming in from importing Microsoft project items and documents. And so Workday cited that as the reason that they're now making it where this is do not use, and they're going to retire it in the future. So if you currently use this functionality, I would say get through this release, definitely test other options. And then outside of your release window, let's start looking at what your options are to go elsewhere functionality wise, right? So this is not going to start working on March 11th. It's still going to work after. And it's probably going to be a little bit longer of a conversation as to how we want to replace these. So I definitely don't want to make that a rush conversation. That's why I would say definitely add this to your release management cycle, but let's do it, when we have a little bit more time to talk about it. All right, next up, customer accounts. Another one that I love, this is kind of something I geek out about, but the ability to override your default delivery type when you're looking at customer invoices that are created from billing schedules. So if you use customer invoices and customer invoice billing schedules, you're familiar when you set up a billing schedule, you used to not be able to override that default delivery option for that invoice, but now we can. So say you have a special type of invoice that you have in a specific schedule and you want it delivered via mail instead of email or something like that. You can override the default that was there for that customer. Again, another functionality that I'm really excited about coming out here. This is automatically available. So the impact here is you can just ignore this if you don't want to use it. If you want to use it, it's there. It may impact if you have like a job aid set up for how to create invoices from a billing schedule, but that's normally a very admin level task. So I don't see a whole lot of specific job aids to that. So that would be the impacts that you would have if you don't want to adopt this. All right, user experience. So Workday is now, they're calling them pop-outs. Last time we had a release, I spoke about report prompts. And whenever you ran a report, the prompt page itself would pop up. And you could fill out those prompts, hit OK, and it would go into the report. And then if you wanted to change the prompts once the report was run, you could hit that volume mixer next to the header, open up a pop-out window, and your report would still be there in the background. Workday's kind of furthering that user experience, and that whenever you edit a report or certain items, it's actually going to create a pop-out screen. And so I'll show you what that looks like. I'm editing a custom report in our test environment again. And when I click edit, and that's why I'm fast forwarding a little bit because the tenant was being slow that day, you'll see that it actually pops out. It's a pop-out window. You can still see the context that the report was run in, which is Workday's language around this, is that the context is retained in the background while the editing is still happening in the foreground. I will tell you the big difference here is that as you are editing this report, whenever you scroll down, it used to be whenever you scroll down, the header went up, right? You scrolled beyond the header. Whenever you scroll in these pop-outs, this gray bar stays here and kind of reminds you of the context that you're running in. The unfortunate downside of that is it does kind of limit your screen real estate whenever you're editing a report. It reduces it by a decent margin. So that is something that's automatically available that's going to roll out to everyone. I don't see it being a big issue for your end users who are not doing a whole lot of edit tasks, but I do see it being an issue, or not an issue, but a change. I do see it being a change for your power users who are editing reports and editing other items. So definitely something to test. All right, next up here, a couple opt-in features that I wanted to present to you. I wanted to focus on, and you know, they might be a significant change in how you do business on some of these items. First up, on supplier contracts. Whenever you're creating, or really whenever you're creating any supplier contract or editing supplier contracts going forward, if you unhide these fields, you can actually put a control amount on the minimum or the maximum a transaction can be that is booked against that supplier contract. So how you opt into this is you go into the configure optional fields task, and on the supplier contract event, you will see that there are two optional fields that are hidden that have these names right here, the charge control amounts. So you unhide those. And once you unhide those optional fields, you're going to see this anytime you edit or create a supplier contract. I think it's great for supplier contracts that are used to control very regular spend. So if you know, hey, this specific supplier, so say it's a rent contract or something like that, the rent should never fall below $2,000 and it should never go above $6,000. This is an additional way that you can control that without having to create some sort of custom validation or anything bolted on after the fact. I think that for certain clients in specific scenarios, this is a really good feature. And unfortunately, you know, supplier contracts, you either use them or you don't. So there will be some of you that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to use. Next up, customer accounts. You have the ability to opt in to allow application from different company invoices. This is basically talking about the on behalf of payments. So if you have a customer invoice, you can actually have two different companies send an on behalf of payment, and you can manage that in a single currency or multiple currencies. And that's done by these automatic payment application rules. So again, this is kind of a small slice of the pie that may be interested in this, but it's a pretty cool feature if you're applying a lot of on behalf of payments that wasn't around before. Next up, for suppliers, this one I really love. So our own Alicia Mall has been working with a lot of you all, and Alicia and a couple of the other folks on our team have a really creative solution for making financial transactions route to managers. And it works out well, but quite honestly, it's kind of having to do a workaround. Workday is now introducing a way that it is Workday supported out of the box for us to route supplier invoices through a management approval chain. So what they're doing here is, if you enable this and you go into your supplier invoice event, you can add a step. That step is going to be an approval chain, and then your security group is going to be manager there. And then Workday recommends that you use a while running condition to basically make the approval go up the chain as far as you want it to. So their example that they give on their What's New post is routing it all the way up to a vice president. And that's exactly what would happen. The downside to this is that you have to actually enter the person whose manager you want to, whose management chain you want to use. You have to enter them in that approver field whenever you're creating the invoice. So there is a little bit of administrative overhead that comes with this specific approach. I will say I really am a big fan of the approach that Alicia and team use, where it looks at who initiated the process, I believe, and it can go up that management chain. So there are already some ways you can do this, but there's now a Workday supported way. And that Workday supported way, while it does require some admin overhead, it does work out well. And it, hopefully they'll continue to iterate and improve on that solution. Bonus tip. This is for all of you power users who are involved in the people experience. So if you've already gone live on the people experience, the federated search, it may be great for end users, and I'm sure that there are a lot of them that use it and love it. But for the power users, it can make finding certain things a little more difficult. So I wanted to give you all kind of a 15-second tip. You can, on the individual level, change to the classic Workday search. In order to do that, you go up to your profile picture or a cloud or whatever you have configured up in the corner up here. You click on that, you go down to my account, you click on change preferences, and then you go midway down the page and you'll see search preferences. In here, you want to change this value from new Workday federated search to classic Workday search. They have not given us like a time limit on how long you're going to be able to opt back into Workday classic search. But I know that for you all who are administrators who on a day-to-day basis are searching for some of the less common things, this is a game changer. This gets you back in business with that old search that you're used to. So definitely a good thing to have up your sleeve. So that's the end of our opt-in post. Next, we're just going to go into the need help section. So the first thing is where to find help on community. On the community homepage here, if you scroll down to the bottom, there is the 2021R, well, this is 2021 R2, but it's really 2022 R1 Preparation Center. If you go to that center, you have your What's New report. And this is not really how you run the What's New report. It's just going to show you how to run the What's New report out of your tenant. And then you also have the What's New posts. I really like guiding clients toward these What New posts. What they are is for the big ticket items for this release. They are a narrative explanation of what those big ticket items are. And they have via videos and via other explanations, one, how to set it up, two, how it functions, and they even try to add some color around what clients that this is good for. So I personally, if you don't like digging through the What's New report, this is a great option. CrossCountry also offers our own custom version of the What's New report. What we did was, and this is all credit to Victoria Corona for creating, it's amazing. It's a matrix report that takes the data from the What's New report and it aggregates it into a more readable format. If you're familiar with matrix reports, it's a smaller amount of data presented on the main page, and then you can drill down into the more detail of the data as you're interested. If you want that in your environment, file a ticket, let us know. It does take a bit of time to configure, but what we can do is configure it in your sandbox preview and then move it to your production so that you can use it every single time the preview environment refreshes. All right, keep going here. You have your adoption planning dashboard. If you're a user of this in Workday, this is another resource you have for your What's New. It does have the supplementing What's New report in the bottom right-hand corner as well. And then this is our What's New matrix. I guess I kind of jumped the gun a little bit on just discussing this, but this is a report that Victoria created. You can see you're able to only include enabled functional areas. So it makes it a little easier to filter down. And then you're able to filter by your domain groups, your system subcategories, and what release you're looking at. And then what comes out is a very nice and readable report. And even since this video has been taken, there's been some work on adding analytic indicators and other items that that help you really flag in on what you should be looking at there. All right. Lastly, we will provide a helpful one-pager with a timeline, resource links, tips, as always, with our heat map. The best way to get the heat map from us is to file a ticket in Workfront. Just flag that ticket as release management and ask for a copy of the heat map. I think that we should be able to get that sent to you pretty quickly, and it has a more detailed view of what we looked at today, as well as some items that we didn't necessarily talk about today. One, because the impacted population is so small, or two, because the change is not significant to end users, but it's still an optimization that's worth reviewing. So the levels of guidance that we offer, if you want CrossCountry's input on your release management process, we have guidance only, which is you file a ticket, you say, hey, I want guidance only for release management. We will give you, first off, an overview session. We will deliver a heat map, talk about what makes sense for your organization. We'll have check-ins throughout the process, making sure that you all are tracking and seeing if there's any way that we can help you with release management. And then that last meeting on that Thursday that I talked about earlier, where we're talking about, hey, are we ready to go live? So that final check-in and making sure that everything's resolved. We'll kind of go through that process hand in hand with you. The more full service one is that we give you a heat map. We can help build out testing scenarios. We'll review opt-in items with you. Of course, we're always there to offer solutions to problems that you find. If you find a problem, even if you're not utilizing our release management offering, if you find a problem during your testing, file a ticket and we'll get it to someone that can help you out. We'll give recommendations on opt-in items based on our review of your environment. And then we can configure solutions as they arise. If you see something that's opt-in and you say, hey, we really want to look at that and test, can CrossCountry configure it for you? We'll be happy to do it. And then the package add-ons. In the case where there's very complex functionality that may need a significant amount of configuration, we can talk about spinning up maybe a miniature project for you. So there are a couple things in the heat map that Workday flags as contact professional services for setup. Those are the features in which we can really help you out. You need an implementer helping you to enable that, because Workday has locked it down due to what it could do if you enable it without all the considerations taken care of. So definitely reach out to us if you see one of those assess professional services. We would be more than happy to talk to you about it. So what now? Existing clients submit a ticket for whatever level of service you want, or if you just want the heat map, shoot us a ticket. We'll get you the heat map after this. Tag it as HCM/FINS release management with your details. If you're asking for actual release management guidance, let us know the level that you want. So if it's guidance only, if it's full service, what have you. Next, also give us a session that you can meet. So if you can give us some timeframes that you can meet to kick it off, that would help the back and forth a little bit, and we can get that scheduled quicker for you. If you're an implementation client, reach out to your PM or your EM on that client, or reach out to Andali. Andali's email is right here, or you can reach out to myself. My email is right here. If you're not a current CrossCountry consulting client, reach out to Andali, same email, or myself, and we can try and get you set up. All right, with that being said, as promised, I left a whopping 26 minutes for Q&A. I do see that we've had some questions answered as we've gone through this. I did want to just kind of review for everyone, if you haven't been watching the Q&A, what we've gone through. So first off, how do you opt out of the people experience? There's a task, as Victoria answered, it's the Workday Today opt-out. So what you need to do is, one, make sure that's done in production. If you do that in Sandbox Preview, it is not going to follow through to production. So make sure that's done in production prior to March 10th. Next, is the matrix setup a one-time setup, and will that work for future releases? Yes, it will work for future releases. It's a one-time setup. What we'll do is we'll set it up in your preview tenant as well as your production tenant, and that will, setting it up in your production tenant will basically make it to where it filters through for the next release cycle whenever we take another copy of that. All right, from Brady, what is the difference between candidate and pre-hire? Candidate records, this stores all the info pertaining to the candidate who is in the recruiting process. Pre-hire records stores all the information pertaining to the candidate who is now ready for hire. You can see the different stages of the cycle is candidate to pre-hire to worker. So that is the case there. And really that was in relevance to the creating the expense report for the candidate versus pre-hire. The reason that Workday did it for the candidate is the focus is on reimbursing candidates for expenses incurred while applying or in the job application process. So there's the questions that we've answered. Does anyone have any questions that they didn't get answered or that they have about anything I talked about today? All right, well, before too many people drop off, I'll let you know we will be distributing a recording of this to you all, as well as copies of the slides. And then as you're reviewing, again, those What's New posts are a great way to start. And if you want a heat map, let us know via ticket and we'll send that out to you. Thank you for your time and thank you for attending. And I look forward to seeing you all in the next release.